So this inequality tells me that 12 is less than 14. Yes, 12 is less than 14. I think we can agree that this inequality is true. I know that if I add or subtract numbers on both sides of an equation, it stays true. But does that happen with inequalities? Let's try it out. Here I'm going to add 2 to both sides of this inequality. Does it stay true? Adding 2 to the 12 on the left side gives me 14, and adding 2 to the 14 on the right side gives me 16. Is the resulting statement true? Is 14 less than 16? Yes, it is. It looks like adding the same number to both sides of an inequality keeps it true. What about subtracting? Okay, I'll use the same inequality. 12 is less than 14. It's still true. Now I'll subtract 15 from both sides. Subtracting 15 from the 12 on the left gives me negative 3. Subtracting 15 from the 14 on the right gives me negative 1. Is the resulting inequality true? Is negative 3 less than negative 1? Yes, it is! So subtracting the same number from both sides of an inequality also keeps the inequality true. So this lesson is going to teach you how to solve an inequality. This inequality is 13 is less than negative 12 plus x. So how do you solve an inequality? Well, this inequality looks a lot like the same thing we were using when we were solving equations. Here's the equation that looks very similar, except it has an equal sign instead of the less than sign. If we were to solve this one, we would try to get x by itself, which means getting rid of the negative 12. Since 12 is being subtracted from the x, we need to add 12 to both sides. Or, we could look at it differently. You could instead say that this x has a negative 12 being added to it, in which case we would subtract a negative 12. But subtracting a negative 12 is the same thing as adding a positive 12. So, looking at the same thing, but as an inequality, we still ask the same question. How is the x not by itself? Now, there are no longer two sides to the equation, since there is no equation, but there is an inequality, and there are two sides to an inequality as well. So you still solve this inequality the same way you would have solved an equation. So how is the x not by itself? It is being subtracted by 12. So what do I need to do? I need to add 12 to both sides. Adding 12 to the 13 on the left gives me 25. And adding 12 on the right gets x all by itself. Now I just tighten up the inequality to get 25 is less than x. But here is the most important part of this lesson that many people forget. In the answer, never leave the variable on the right side of an inequality. It is very confusing. After all, what does it mean that 25 is less than x? I want to know what x is. So if 25 is less than x, then the opposite, x must be greater than 25, when I basically flip the whole thing. In other words, the entire inequality must be flipped around altogether. Notice two things. The inequality no longer says less than, it says greater than. And the x and the 25 has switched sides. Now it is easy to understand what x is. X is greater than 25. The other advantage to writing it this way is because it is way easier to graph this on a number line when the variable is on the left side of the inequality. Don't try graphing this when the variable is on the right side. Most students get that wrong.